you're just funny. It's funny, the way you tell the story and everything.
Funny how?
Come here, though. Yeah, he's crazy, see? Who are you?
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Are you ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Berardo Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Tony Berardo. Today's an interesting episode because most of these podcasts, you hear me kind of talk about health, wellness, social interaction. That's the nuts and bolts of the Berardo Podcast. But today, I do want to talk about something with an old friend of mine, actually, Justin Westerman, who's a financial advisor. And he has been for quite some time. And I've talked before about saving money and focusing on your break even. And I've dipped a little bit into real estate and had some experts in that field. But I think it's important now more than ever that we focus more on our financial health. And I think we did that today with this episode. Justin and I talked a lot about not just the real estate market, the financial industry, 401ks, savings accounts, retirement plans, all types of really interesting stuff that no matter what age you are, I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this. I'm going to leave his information below along with his email. He mentions it in the podcast here, but reach out to him if you have any questions. Like I said, he's a great financial advisor. Without further ado, everyone, please help me welcome Justin Westerman. Well, first, dude, thanks again for wanting to come on the show. I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
What prompted you to hop on the show?
I've always been thinking about, starting a podcast myself. There's several people in my industry that do it. And I figured let's kind of test the waters and be a guest first and see, what it could do for me or something along those lines. So I'm looking forward to just kind of, talking about what I talk about with everybody all the time. So
yeah. Oh, very cool.
And take it from there. Yeah.
Cool. And then, I ended up doing, a pre-intro beforehand, but for the listeners, first time, why don't you give a quick little cliff note to Justin and we'll kind of get into it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, my name's Justin. I am with Coastal Wealth. I'm a financial advisor. I specialize in advanced retirement strategies and pension maximization, specifically for people who are in the Florida retirement system. So I've got a lot of people that work for the state, and I live here in the Tallahassee area, which is obviously the major hub for state workers. So that's where the bulk of my business is from. But I work with referrals and other, avenues outside of that as well. I've been in the industry for almost 5 years now. So I've, been in for a while now. I'm considered a veteran in the industry, and I've really found my niche lately. So, and that's usually working with people who are roughly between the ages of 35 and 55, just really trying to get a handle on retirement. Because as you know, like when we were in, working at Regal Cinemas back as teenagers, if somebody would have said, "Hey, let's talk about retirement," I'd be like, I don't even know if I'm going to live that long. Like, who cares? So, but nowadays I have some of my clients are as young as like 17, 18, fresh out of high school, like, that I've met through their parents or whatever. And,
wow.
And I've got some people that are saving more money than people I've met in their 60s. And I'm like, so this is a topic that is near and dear to me. And I'm hoping to gain more exposure and get more people thinking about this, because it's never too early to start, honestly.
Yeah.
There's always times that's too late, but,
yeah.
but it's never too early.
That's with a lot of things, right? Like there's always, we always end up having those conversations with our like previous self saying, I wish I did this. I wish I did that. And
exactly.
Regret.
And I'm the same way. I was like,
yeah.
I wish I would have done a lot of this when I was 18, 19 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I didn't mention in the intro, but yeah, that's Regal Cinemas. That was my first gig. I don't know about you.
It was, I was at Winn-Dixie for maybe a month or two. And then I was making minimum wage there, just stocking shelves and whatnot and bagging.
Right.
But then Regal Cinemas is like, hey, we'll pay you like 50 cents more an hour. I was like, sweet, sold.
It was just that easy.
Yeah, it was. And then I stayed there for about a year.
Yeah. Amazing what 50 cents back then
Exactly.
we get so jacked up
Yeah.
about. Like I remember after that, I think I went to go work for, I did LA Fitness for a long time. And then in between that, I did TGI Fridays. And I was a server, and I started off as a busboy and then a server. And back then, I don't know how it is now in the hospitality industry, but back then it was like $2.50 per hour is what we got paid, and then you mainly get paid off tips. But I think now it's more like minimum wage. But it's interesting because we would always fight like, a year out as being a server. It was like, hey, or a better example would be when I was at Regal. I don't know if you were there when. So VJ and Tim and those guys were managers. And when I got promoted to supervisor, fucking not that big of a deal. But it was such a big deal because it was a 25-cent raise.
Yeah.
From, whatever we were making, $6 an hour. I don't know what we were making. But
Yeah.
that 25 cents is big. But now, it's, you look at that and you don't really take it that seriously when it comes to hourly wage. And I don't know if maybe that's a good thing, right? Because obviously, minimum wage has raised drastically in the past 15 years to hopefully something comfortable for people. But, I think now we kind of look at it like, what's our worth versus, what we should be getting paid based off of the government or, minimum wage, things like that. Because minimum wage is great until you realize that you can make more per hour or you can make a salary. You get that annual salary that ends up breaking down to like $40 an hour, and you're like, wait a minute, what the hell? I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah.
But back then we were content with $6 an hour. It's very interesting.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
So retirement is funky, right, Justin? Because there's not a lot of at least I know you said you have people in the industry that that do podcasts on them. I'd be interested, maybe afterwards shoot me a note about checking those out, because I've always thought to myself before I started this podcast, I wanted to do something in that space because when I would post videos or I would do like individual podcasts, because I do a lot of podcasts when I don't have guests on. And I don't know, have you heard any of my podcasts before?
I've just
Maybe
like
just clips and
snippets of
stuff?
them, but I haven't gone through like full podcasts yet.
Yeah, that's okay. Before I post this episode, you got to go watch all 160, okay?
Of course, yeah.
I'm just kidding. No, but originally it started off with me just being just myself and venting because my wife was sick of hearing me talk. So I was like, let me start a podcast. And I wasn't really sure what it would be, but a lot of it was not necessarily retirement, but saving money, keeping track of your break even, your personal break even, like things like that, to where people always bitch and complain about not having a lot of money. I just had a podcast yesterday on this, but people always complain that they don't have money. So first thing to do, what do? They blame Biden. They blame Trump. They blame, the government, and gas prices are high, and, Ukraine and Russia, and maybe it's their employer. Maybe, you're a Spanish female and you think your employer is racist, which is why you're getting paid less. Like we always make up these excuses, and really the bottom line is you're just not good at saving money. You're not good at investing money. And a lot of that could be solved by just not spending it. That's probably tip number one, I would say.
Yeah,
I'd love to get your thoughts on this. But, if you're making $30,000 a year, you could live comfortably. You're not going to have a brand new Tesla Model 3, and, you're not going to live in a 2-story, 5,000 square foot home on the beach. No. But, you have food in your belly, a roof over your head, and you're able to support, at least one family member. Right. But you can't go to Starbucks every day.
No.
You can't shop at Target. Yeah. You might have to go to Ulti every now and then. You know what I mean? It's like there's options, but maybe society has put us in this bubble to where we want the cool shit. So when we don't have the cool shit, we like to blame a lot of other people besides looking in the mirror and saying, oh, maybe I just need to be better at spending money, and then eventually I'll buy the cool shit, but now I got to save. And are you seeing that now with a lot of clients? Do they come to you saying, hey, I have X amount of dollars and, I don't really know what I'm doing with my money? Or is it more?
It's a funny question, because most people generally shy away from people like me only because, they're scared that they don't have enough money, or they're scared of what I might find in their balance sheet, whatever the case may be. But let me do that work. It's funny because some people will come and say, "Oh, I don't have anything," but then I analyze everything that has a dollar sign,
Right.
and they're like, "Oh, well, I have more than I thought I did." I was like, "Yeah," and I can show you ways to basically take money from your back pocket, put it into your front pocket, and grow that better than what you're already doing. And so that's really where my expertise comes in at, is that let's see where you're putting money away at, and see if we can make that work more efficiently for you, especially taxes, because that's one of the big hot topics. Every political campaign, everybody talks about taxes.
Right.
And it's true. Like, we're at historically low tax rates right now, which means they can only go up from here. And so what are you doing? Everybody says don't put all your eggs in one basket, meaning don't invest in just one thing or another. But really, it's how are you going to diversify your taxes? Not so much how are you going to diversify your portfolio, because taxes will rob you in the middle of the night. Same with inflation. And that's another hot topic that's going on right now, is how fast the inflation has been growing. So that's really what I see out of a lot of my clients is, first of all, they're scared to even talk to me because they don't want to know what kind of shape they're in.
Sure.
And then two, they're just, they don't think they have enough money to even work with me. And I've had people in the $30,000 range, and I've had people in the 250 plus range, and just everything in between. And to your point, it's not how much you can, save or whatever. It's how much of that money you can keep. And I guess kind of the same thing, but the point being is that, what are you spending your money on? I'm not a budget police. I don't want to affect your lifestyle. But if you're maxing out your 401k and you have no money, and because I see all these people that have $1,000 in their savings account, yet they've got like $500,000 in their 401k because they're putting away 18 grand or so a year in it. I was like, why don't you scale that back and have a little bit of a cushion? Because that way, in case something comes up and you need that money, you don't have to get penalized for taking it out of your 401k.
Yeah.
And so that's a big one.
Yeah. And I mean, there's definitely a lot of benefits to having a 401k, but I had a 401k for, I don't even know, almost 10 years at one of my main jobs when I first worked at Coca-Cola. Great company because they matched 100%, so it's worth it, right?
Sure.
If you're not going to use it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's other ways to get that ROI. Maybe not 100%. So if your 401k is only matching 25%, 50%, is it worth it to invest a lot of money into that? Like, what are your thought process on that matching? I know you're not the budget police, but just curious.
Yeah. No, and that's an excellent question, because it's one I get a lot of people ask me, because, for example, if they don't match at all, it's not even worth putting money into a 401k, because there's so many other avenues that you can take to grow that money more efficiently. Now, if you are contributing and there is a match, only contribute up to the match and then use the other money to invest elsewhere. Because these 401ks, they're tax traps. You go back to the 80s when 401ks started to really come alive because pensions went away. That's really why we have 401ks, because there's not a lot of industries that still have pensions, other than like state workers or like the insurance industry, finance industry. We all, like, I have a pension, but most companies don't have pensions anymore, because it's just too expensive, because all these people were living longer. And so they don't want to keep paying all this money. So now it's up to us to invest our own. So they came out with 401ks, and even those, they're tax traps. And so if you've got
and
a
the penalties,
401k,
right? Like that's how they make their money.
Exactly.
Those big old penalties are outrageous. And I ended up pulling out, my 401k a little bit early, but I ended up getting a really good deal and low interest rate on a home. So I bought my first home through my 401k.
Yeah.
But I kind of looked at that like, well, I'm only pulling out what I invested in it. So it was free to me eventually, but it would have been a lot more if I waited 25 years. But at the same time, I look at it like, now I'm reallocating those funds into property, and this was
Exactly.
7 years ago. So I got a gorgeous house. I mean, you're from Orlando, in Castleberry.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
it's right
Yep.
near Deer Run, that
Okay.
that area, if you're familiar. But up and
Mhm.
coming, and I got it for like 140 grand, I think. And it was a 3-bedroom single home, and that, fast forward 5 years later, I ended up selling it for a massive profit. But
Yeah.
you look at it like the amount of money that I pulled out of my 401k. Yeah, there was a penalty, but it was kind of all liquid because
Mhm.
it was just everything I was matching. And then I put
Sure.
that into property, and then years later, I ended up flipping it and making money. So really, I didn't pay for the
Nice.
house, if you want to look at it that
Yeah.
way.
Mhm.
I was able to live in a place, right, and just pay the mortgage, pay the rent,
Sure.
and then flip it
Yeah.
and make it, and I ended up buying 2 more properties after that. But, again, I always look at it like that's, if you had a long-term plan, because that was my always plan and strategy,
Mhm.
that might be one way to go. But to your point, it's almost like if you just put 401, you put money into 401k just because you're told, hey, if you put it in there in 40 years, you'll be able to retire with X. Well, what if
Yeah.
the company goes under?
Exactly.
What if they're diversifying your portfolio, and you don't know where the money's going, and you end up losing money, or you end up getting taxed? I mean, there's a lot of things that are out of your control when it comes to that. So, yeah, it's a little scary for sure to do
Sure.
that. But, I
Yep.
mean, what are some other ways aside from maybe a 401k that, off the top of your head that, you can invest in?
Well, I mean, even with a 401k, if they have a Roth option, I would
Mm,
always, offer or, recommend to look into that,
sure.
or a Roth IRA, just because you're paying with after tax dollars. That way you don't have to pay taxes if you need that money out.
Right.
You can go ahead and just pull that money out, and you've already paid the taxes on it, so you don't have to worry about that penalty or anything like that.
Smart.
But to your specific question, I mean, there are a multitude of ways that you can tuck money away.
Hmm.
Um, Something that I had never thought of before coming into the financial planning industry is any sort of annuities or cash value life insurance, because people skip over that, because when they hear life insurance, they're like, oh no, it's
Yeah.
all a scam, blah blah, and I thought that way too. But if somebody's bored and they want to go on to like bankofamerica.com and look at their balance sheet, look how many billions of dollars they've invested in whole life insurance. It's insane, because the tax benefits, like, it grows tax free. You can take it out tax free as long as you're not like putting too much money into it. So there's a lot
Hmm.
of benefits to that. So I actually, a lot of my clients, in addition to their 401k, IRA, any real estate portfolio that they may have going on, they'll put some into a whole life insurance so that they can supplement their retirement later on. What
Hmm.
we call supplemental life insurance retirement planning. And so they put in, let's say, for 25 years, they're putting in, $500,000. When they go to turn on the retirement income, it's like $1.5 million that they can get back out of that policy, spread over, 10 years or so. So they're able
Wow.
to tuck money away, tax free, and then get it back out tax free later on in life. I think that's a beautiful strategy, but it shouldn't be your only one, because
Sure.
again, we want to put money in each of the different tax strategies that we have. So that would be like kind of like a Roth IRA in a sense. I have to be careful, because you can't really tie life insurance with investments, because it's not the life insurance isn't tied to the market. There are some that are, but for a basic policy, it's not.
Yeah.
So that's one way. I mean, there's, but a lot of people use that in conjunction with a traditional just brokerage account, like stocks, bonds, mutual funds. I do a lot of mutual funds just because people don't want to have to think about the money that's already professionally managed by the whoever that mutual fund is held by. I don't have to really think about it. I just kind of put their money in there and let because investing and everything, it's a long-term strategy. I'm not one of these people that, I can turn $100 into $1 million overnight. Like, that's not what I do.
Yeah.
Over
And
the
it's
years, people
unrealistic
have
as
been
hell too.
like, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like people say, oh, well, you're a financial advisor. Don't you just sit behind a computer and trade stocks for people all day? Nope.
No.
I've never done that actually, and I can interpret stocks for you and I can kind of give you some guidance, but ultimately that decision's up to you.
Yeah.
I'm not gambling with your money. I can tell you, tax efficient ways to invest your money, but I'm not going to sit here and gamble your money away, because if I did that on my own, and I have, I think in my bio, I mentioned that, in 2009, I cashed out my portfolio from Edward Jones, and I lost most of it because I thought I could do it all on my own. I can invest on my own, and nope.
It's definitely not as easy.
We put too much. We have too much emotion in our own money, so
that's right.
We need to make sure we have somebody that can take the emotion out of that equation. Because if you sit there and watch, crypto or stocks or whatever your poison is, I guess,
right.
We're gonna see it go down a little bit, like, oh no, we got to sell. It's like, no, that's the worst time. Actually, you should put more in when it goes down. That way, when it goes back up, you're just riding that mountain back up.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're one of those people like me. When I started getting involved in stocks very very early, and I told myself, I was like, I'm only going to do this if I can literally put money in it. I told myself it's going to be X amount of dollars. I'm going to pick stocks that I don't necessarily use, some that I use, but most of them are going to be like, ones that are cheap, that I see having potential. And, that was like Celsius, which is an energy drink, Carvana, that started off at like $4 a share. And then it had some dips, obviously, just like everything else, but it skyrocketed there for a while. So if you put your money into it and don't look at it at all, don't buy, don't sell. If you do something like that and tell yourself, hey, if I end up losing money, great. If I end up gaining money, great, but I'm not going to look at it for 10 years. If you have that self-control and you could do that, that might be the best way to do stocks if you don't hire somebody to trade for you, because that trading thing is it's worse than social media. I mean, you look on like Instagram, and a lot of people I don't think anybody's talked about this, but I look at like social media as like a little form of gambling. It's almost like except it's the opposite. When you have no likes, there's something that happens in your brain where you want the likes. It's almost like it's like that gambler that wants to lose. That's how they get the rush. They love being at the bottom so they can get back up. Like they purposely, maybe not, but subconsciously they're losing every time they gamble. They know eventually it's gonna lead to that crash, and they kind of dig it. They dig the climb back up. And that's kind of like how social media is, I feel like, because every time we like something, or we get a like, or we get a comment, that dopamine hits us, and we're just there's like, ooh,
instant gratification.
Yes, I'm gonna keep playing on this app, and that's how we feel like we're at the fucking blackjack table or craps.
Do you watch? Have you ever watched Black Mirror, the show?
Oh, I love that show.
It was like, I think season 3, episode 1. It was all about how everybody has a rating. Credit scores go away, and everybody has a rating. And that's exactly what came to mind when you mentioned social media and the instant gratification.
Yeah, I think that actually has what's her name from Jurassic World, the redhead. Yeah, she's the main. She's missing. Yep. That's a great show. And what's weird about that show is if you go back and watch like season 1, like everything that's happened in season 1 like has happened in 2022. Like they were like 6 years. It's like watching The Simpsons. Like these guys are predicting the future. It's kind of gnarly how it's all happened. I think one of the episodes that terrifies me is the robot, the 4-legged robot that took out like, pretty much all of the human race. And I feel like, Boston Dynamics is going to end up creating something where it's going to like take us over. And, we always think it's going to be like AI or, Mark Zuckerberg's going to create this metaverse weird thing. But no, I think it's going to be like, they're going to make some type of cool robot that's supposed to build us like cars. And then the robot's just going to be like, fuck cars.
Yeah.
Let me take this human plasma.
It's like we've got a Indian restaurant here that has bought, I think, 1 or 2 robots that serves your food now. So I mean, the cooks will put it on the robot, and then they take it to the table.
Whoa.
And drinks and everything. And I'm like, And I had eaten there, and then like literally 2 weeks later, they get these robots in. And I've got some, business or owner friends in town that have restaurants, and they're like, we should probably do that too. Nobody wants to work in the food industry anymore, so we're just going to hire robots to serve everybody their food.
Yeah.
I was like, it's a pretty genius idea.
It's
I mean,
so
they're
true.
like $30,000+ for each one, but it's either that or pay somebody $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
And
Or
that's probably just going to quit on you.
yeah, exactly. Or make
The robot's
it.
not going to quit.
Yeah. I mean, even like these other restaurants, like I think it was, where was I at? It was like Chili's or Olive Garden, like one of those Darden restaurants, I think. And me and my wife went out there, and this was about a year or so ago, maybe right after the pandemic. And they had the little kiosks at the table,
Mm-hmm.
where you order everything from there, you pay through there, it's all through there. And there was a server that kind of popped in that was almost like a food runner, essentially.
Sure.
And I think that was like step one is you're ordering from the table, then you get a food runner that's going to drop off your food, and then eventually it's going to be 0 humans that we interact with.
Yeah.
It's like a buffet that comes to us. I think that's eventually going to be, the thing. And it's happening relatively quick too.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, obviously in the past 10 years we're automating everything, but more and more, to go back to kind of what you do, more and more of what we do on a daily basis, I think we have to start thinking a little bit farther ahead, because if, you could be, everyone says they want to make a lot of money and I want to be a millionaire. Well, if you could think a little bit more far ahead and understand trends and understand kind of where this world is going and not fight it, a lot of people that saw Uber originally, there's so many stories out there of people that passed on Uber, to invest in. And you look at it now, like they have completely destroyed the cab industry, except in a few key markets like New York and LA and things like that. But, imagine if you saw that 10 years ago and someone pitched it to you and you're like, nah, man, everyone's going to take taxi cabs forever. Those are the people that are fighting it. The same people that say that social media is just going to eventually crash. No, it's there's a trend.
When Facebook's IPO came out, I think in 2014, I invested right away. I was like, this is going to be great. Because I had already been on Facebook for almost 10 years anyway. I was like, I think they're just going to keep taking off. And then, I put emotion into it, and I think I sold it off like when it started to dip really bad.
Oh, no.
But, back then I didn't really know what I know now. And if I would have just held on to it, like they say about everything else, hindsight's 2020, I would have so much more money, because I put quite a bit into it. And I was like, just kidding. Let's back out of this.
Well, I mean, same thing with Twitter now, kind of where Twitter's at now. I have, I still have stocks in Twitter, and I'm not touching it, because I'm hoping, listen, if whatever happens with Elon and if he takes it over or not, eventually, I mean, that Twitter name is going to be around for quite some time, and eventually it'll split and it'll grow, and, it's going to get back to where it was originally. Because there's still nothing like it. I mean, there's still millions and millions and millions of people on that platform, even though everyone makes fun of it. But it's almost like when we used to watch Jerry Springer. Remember Jerry Springer? Like you didn't watch it. You didn't watch it for the great content.
No.
you right? Like, excuse me. You didn't watch it for like the educational content.
Sure.
You watched it because you wanted to see fights break out, and you wanted to see wigs fly off, and you wanted to see the craziness. Because I think that's what we are, like evolutionary, humans. We've evolved to kind of this weird animal to where we like to watch people. It's you go out into the wild and you don't see chimpanzees doing this because they're involved in it, right?
Sure.
But we love to go to zoos, and we love to watch these things, and we love watching from afar. But it's kind of weird how we evolved to that, to where we love the madness, we love the craziness, and it. Like gambling and things like that.
Like NASCAR, nobody goes to watch them make a bunch of left turns. We're there to see somebody crash.
Yeah.
In fact, I was at the race back in 2001 that Dale Earnhardt died at, and so I stopped NASCAR after that. I was like, he was my favorite driver. I was like, nope, I'm done. Oh, I can't do this. I'm here, and I didn't actually think I'd witness something like that. But
that's horrible. Yeah, he was the man, number 3. Yeah, he was my favorite too. I had the shirts, I had the jackets.
I still have a whole shrine of his memorabilia at my dad's house, just all packed up.
That's gnarly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, NASCAR is definitely one of those things. I mean, I would even say there's more things that are wild that we partake in versus not. I mean, on a daily basis, like we enjoy like all those videos, those fail videos.
Yeah.
right? Like all the ones of people falling, and we laugh so hard because it is funny. But I don't know where that came from though. Like where, I guess we couldn't experience it, right? Like, you know, before social media, we weren't able to see that all the time. You know, it was only like your group of friends that you remember like when we went to high school, those big electrical boxes. I don't know about you. We're about the same age, but we used to hang out like at the electrical boxes. Did you guys do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then that was like a thing. Like that was the closest we got to social media because you're able to just hang out with friends and you're busting each other's balls and you're doing nut slaps and you're wrestling and you're making fun of each other and you're busting balls about like the Jinko jeans you're wearing and that was like
I feel attacked.
Yes. Well, dude, I was cranking the Jinko jeans, the chain wallet.
Yeah.
I was rocking the DCs and I had my JanSport book bag with the white out on it.
Yep.
I used to write like corn, 9-inch nails. Yeah, it's but you know that we have evolved to that to now we just kind of sit back from afar and watch people. You know, because I have a couple stepbrother and a stepsister, and I posted something on like TikTok about the electrical boxes, and even my father was like, "What the hell does this mean? What is this like?" My dad immediately goes to like the negative. He's like, "Is that?" Yeah. What is that? Some type of drug thing? Or redneck accent, but he's not redneck. It's more like, hey, what is this? Some type of drug thing? That's more like him. Yeah. What is this? Some type of drug thing you're doing? And I go, what do you mean? I was like, I used to do that like back in middle school and high school. He's like, nah, I don't remember that. That's some type of drug thing. And I went up to my brother and my sister. They're much younger than me. And I go, you guys remember that, right? And they go, no, we don't do that. I go, what? So when social media happened, they stopped doing the electrical box because they're just on their fucking phone and hanging out. Yeah. Which is crazy.
It's funny because I actually hung out with my son and his sister at an electrical box a few years ago, and it brought back so many memories. I was like, yes.
Way to bring it back.
But of course, and my dad retired from a power plant, Orlando Utilities Commission. And so when he found out that we were hanging around the electrical box, he's like, no, you're going to get electrocuted. Like, don't do that. You can't sit on those.
That's us, part of the thrill. We
exactly.
Maybe deep down we knew it, but we're like, who cares? It's kind of part of the thrill.
Yeah.
But I don't know where we were going with that, but that was
fun. I don't know either.
But yeah, I mean, you know, just kind of going back to everything full circle. I mean, it's so interesting how, like, as a young, child, as you were saying, when we're that age, whether it's 15, 16, 17, and we're not really thinking about the future, right? Like, we're thinking about working at the movie theater, and we're just only thinking about that. We're not thinking about 10 years from now, what if I need to buy a house? What if I need to get married? What if I have kids? What if I have kids unexpectedly, right? Because that's always a good practice as well if you're at a young age is, listen, you want to experiment, you want to go hang out with a nice young lady, and you're not wearing protection, something might happen. And, you're left with a kid and now you have all these responsibilities, but you have no money. It's always good to kind of start early and save because, I always thought to myself, what's the alternative? So you save a little bit money, invest a little bit more money. Now you don't have money for what? To buy a car, to buy Starbucks, to buy, like what? What are we talking about? Like, what is more important than saving money for your retirement, for your future? So that way, when you don't have a job, because eventually, I don't know if you know this, newsflash, when you're like 70 years old, no one's going to hire you. So if you want to live to 100, which is happening more and more often as we get older and we're learning new things, that 30 years from 70 when you stop working to 100, that 30 years, you're not going to have any income coming in. What's your plan here? You can't really live off of that 401k because you're gonna have to cash it out, right? When you retire. So unless you're really investing heavily in that and they're matching it, so I guess my question to you is, Justin, like, what is like the step one if someone wants to, let's say they're 18, 19, 20 years old and they want to invest money into either XYZ, or they just want to put away money, or they just want a long-term strategy. Like, what's the best thing for them to do day one? Let's take a quick break to introduce today's sponsor. So on this show, we talk a lot about health, wellness, but sometimes there's so much info out there. It's just, it's hard to get started. Well, if you need a little nudge, check out perfectketo.com. They don't just have great supplements, but it's a really great resource to keep you educated on ways to help improve your health through a low-carb diet. Now, not everybody is into keto or low carb, and that's totally okay. I get it. But Perfect Keto has tons of great supplements, snacks, and foods that you can work into any diet. And just for being a listener of the show, you're going to get 20% off your entire order by visiting perfectketo.com and using the code TheBarardo. Again, that's perfectketo.com. Use the code TheBarardo. Thank you, Perfect Keto.
Day one is get a second bank account. Because our checking accounts are incinerators. If we see money in there, chances are you're going to spend it. You're going to know how much is in there because we all have phones and our accounts are always on our apps. Get a bank account that you don't even link an app to it.
Ooh,
and
that's
just tuck money in there. Because the more that you see that bank account, the more you're going to be like, oh, yeah, I've got like $1,000 in this other account. I can just pull from that. No, just forget about it. Just set up some sort of systematic savings plan to tuck money, even if it's like $25 a week or a month or whatever you're comfortable saving. Just put it away in there, because it's all about building that habit. Because most people do not have a habit of saving. The only habit they have of saving is whatever your employer says to put into your 401k, and we've already discussed that, so I'm not going to go back in that circle. But that's really step one is get a second bank account. And most people have like Chase or Bank of America, Wells Fargo, whatever. Go to a credit union, open up just a small like $100, put your first $100 in or whatever. Or if you're like me and I got money from graduating high school, I put it into what was that, CFE credit union when I lived down there. And I just let it sit there. And then I had a different bank account just to, for my everyday expenditures. And you can almost use that. Like, obviously that's your rainy day fund, so to speak.
Sure.
Or if you want to, some people use that second bank account to pay themselves a salary. So what they do is they'll just transfer what they need to pay their bills, and maybe just a little bit extra. But that way it's separate from your everyday expenditures. So that would definitely be my first recommendation as far as getting started with saving is have a second bank account.
And probably don't have a debit card to that account.
Just pretend it's not there. It's just something that you put money into, just for an oops fund.
Yeah. like a 401k. You just put a little portion of your paycheck,
Yeah.
Into that, if that helps people. But
yeah,
no, that's a good practice for sure. Yeah. Multiple bank accounts, especially if, again, you got a lot of bills. It's always good because sometimes if money's not coming in and you got to pay some bills, to me, it's also like if you get used to, here's a great example. If you get used to having a certain amount of income, right, in your pocket, going back to like when we were kids, if you had $5 a week is what you got paid for your allowance, which for me, it was close to that. If I did more stuff, sometimes I would make up to like $15 a week. But, if I was so happy with $15 a week, but come Monday morning or Tuesday, I would figure out a way to spend that money, whether that was a little bit at the vending machine at school or whatever it was, whatever money I had in my pocket is what I would spend. But I realized that some days where I actually left $5 at home and took $10 with me to school, I ended up spending that $10 in a couple days.
Of course. Yep.
And then I come back and, there's $5. So imagine if you did that every single time, right? And that's kind of how you got to look at it, is the more money you have physically in your pocket or in the bank account, in your debit card, the more money you're going to spend. But if you can cut all ties to that and just pretend like it doesn't exist. And I tell this to my wife all the time. She never listens, but I try. But, it's like, what do we really need on a daily basis? If you can change your perception a little bit about what you need, you're going to have a lot more money, which is super interesting. We just started a business a few months back, and I told her, I was like, we can only do this if we do X, Y, Z, and one of the X's in that was we got to stop all the excessive spending. The Target runs to buy the little knickknacks that are right up front that every wife loves, the $5 fucking shit, the aisles right when you walk in. Oh, but it's on sale. You know what's also on sale? It's free if you don't buy it. That's the sale, right? If you don't buy it, it doesn't cost you anything. So on sale is not a good idea. Like when they try to go to Marshalls and TJ Maxx and they see buy one get one, just don't buy it. So but if we could change our mindset a little bit, you're gonna have a lot of extra money kind of left over in the pocket.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the FIRE movement?
FIRE movement? No.
Yeah. FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And it's prominent more in younger generations because what they're doing, the whole goal of the FIRE movement is to reduce expenditures drastically. I mean, live on as very little as much as possible while trying to save as much of your income as possible. So there's people out there that can save like 75% of their income and live on very minimal. That way, by the time they're like 35, they can basically retire because they've saved up a couple $1 million if they went on to a good career and had quite a bit. But I mean that's an exact an outlier, but that's basically what the FIRE movement is. And there's a book called Playing with Fire that I've actually sent to some of my clients because they're interested in that. And it's not necessarily, you don't have to be young to start it. I mean, it's just a concept really.
Right.
And the concept being that the more you save, the more you're going to have. That's just simple math.
Yeah. That's true. And what was the book called? Playing with Fire?
Playing with Fire.
Yeah. I'll look into that.
Yep. Yeah. And, but yeah, it's a great way of changing your mindset because do we really need that Starbucks every day? Do we really need, every year to upgrade our iPhone? Do we really need all this stuff? We don't. We're just keeping up with the Joneses. And I think that expression that's been around for decades still holds true today. There's a lot of things like, and I inadvertently did this. I've been an Android user until January of this year. I had never touched an Apple product. And so when I got a case for my phone, I bought an OtterBox like I've done for life. But now, I'm ashamed to admit this, but I bought a case for my iPhone now that is clear on the back, so you can see that there's the iPhone symbol on the back. And I was like, and I inadvertently did that because I'm like, I'm not like this. I've never been like this. Like, why did I do that?
That blue bubble changes people, bro.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, but all kidding aside, the reason why I switch is the camera capability finally surpassed Samsung Galaxy phones. Yeah. And because when I sold my house last year, the professional photographer that came out, he shot the entire house with his iPhone 13 Pro Max.
Yep.
So I went out and I got a 13 Pro Max. I was like, because I love photography and I don't really post much anymore, but I mean, just the option to have, to be able to take really good photographs and edit them from my phone is something that I really love.
Yeah. And that cinematic mode. I mean, come on, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I honestly think, because, I do a lot of photography and videography as well. And I honestly think maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's going to get to a point to where Canons of the world and Sonys, they're going to have to come out with the phone and get in the cell phone business because I feel like more and more people are just going to carry around this as their camera. And because I could take some really great photos, and then now you go to Photoshop or Lightroom on your phone, you edit it there. Because we don't take photos and videos like we used to, where we used to take it and then we used to hook it up with those 3-pronged, the white, the yellow, the red, hook it up to the TV, and then we used to show our family. Look at this. I hooked it up to my camcorder. No, all we do is we just show them on the phone.
Yep.
And we post it. So what's the purpose of this digital camera? Because eventually, what am I going to do with this? I got to take the digital camera. I got to hook it up to my Mac. I got to upload all my photos. I edit it on my Mac, and then I airdrop it to my phone, and then I post it on my phone. So why not just do this? So
cut out the middleman. Yeah.
So it's, and a lot of stuff like that is, changing and shaping kind of what we as society and as humans, what we're doing on a daily basis, because we're always looking for the thing that is, going to get us rich quick and what's going to get us the fastest results. Like, that's what we need. Our attention spans are so low, and we want the coolest things, and we want the fastest things, and we want the easiest things. And we want to sit back and be, high and mighty and be on our pedestal and say, you kids are, that's the wrong way to think. But really, I mean, at the end of the day, that's evolution. That's how it's going to work.
Sure.
It's just happening so fast,
Oh,
dude. It is crazy. Like this TikTok sensation has changed things as well to where now people that weren't on their phone 2 years ago are now on their phone all the time, and they're creating content and they're doing things. So now you have even more competition, and we're forgetting about the little things, right? Like we're forgetting a lot of friends I talk to that are younger than me. I'm 30. I just turned 37. So a lot of friends that are younger than me, in their early 30s, I say, hey man, what'd you do this weekend? They're like, I went out, I partied, I did this. Me and the wife stayed home. We, fucked around on TikTok, yada yada. And I'm just like, did you buy a house yet? No, I'm still renting. Okay. You get a new job yet? No, I'm still at the same job, getting paid the same last 10 years. I go, okay. So we're spending so much time on our devices, and we're spending so much time with all the cool shit that's around us. We're forgetting about the little things, and that's kind of all the stuff that we're talking about, which is like long-term planning.
Sure.
I think our parents, the reason why they came over from wherever the fuck they came over, mine from overseas, and they came to America, and or if they're from America, whatever, but they literally only had one thing to think about, and that is work and family, right? Like I'm working to take care of my family. That's it. And, they always did everything for the family and for long-term growth and hopefully freedom and hopefully all this stuff that we're privileged to have today. But we forget about those things because we're on our devices and we're living through these TV screens. Like we kind of forget about, what's our long-term strategy like? Justin, Tony, what are you guys planning to do in 10 years? You don't have time to think about that shit because you're just embedded into the Kardashians and what Justin Timberlake is doing today. Like we're just kind of all soaked into this stuff. So I think what you're doing is very important because a lot of people have forgotten about it. I've been guilty of it as well myself. Last thing before I let you go, I do want to talk a little bit about the inflation, recession, potentially that's coming. Like, what's your thought process on all these quote unquote experts that are saying we're going to hit a recession, the bubble's going to pop, get out of stocks, right? Like, well, what's your thought process and all that stuff, like long-term wise, a year from now, 2 years from
now? So traditionally the average inflation rate is 3%. That's always been the magical number year over year, is that the average over a 10-year period is roughly 3% inflation. And so when we think about saving and investing, we want to account for that. We want to account for your tax rate. We want to account for any little hiccups or life events that come along the way when you're trying to build a portfolio, because inflation is the number one killer of your money overnight. And so when I plan, I give numbers for what your projected balance could be inside of a hypothetical gain inside of your account over X amount of years. I always account for inflation. I always account for your tax rates and really where you put your money as well. Because like I mentioned, the tax strategy, like you have to have some sort of a tax strategy as well, and not just where, not just putting all your money into like a 401k or an IRA. There has to be different, because there's three different types of taxes, and it's tax now, tax later, and no tax, basically. So you want to have a little bit of money in each one so that later on you can offset all those taxes. Because if all you got is everything in your 401k, we don't even know if Social Security is going to be around, 20, 30 years from now. Yeah. But they say retirement's like a four-legged stool. You want to have four different streams of income. And so Social Security may or may not be there, but that's one of them. Your retirement accounts, a 401k, an IRA, maybe an annuity, real estate, whatever it may be. But, your goal is at least 3 to 4 different types of income streams in retirement. Because obviously if you sit down on a two-legged stool, you're going to fall over. And that's exactly what it's going to be like in retirement for you too. You're going to be one of those people who's on a fixed income at, 70 plus years old because you didn't plan for all these other accounts along the way. And luckily the younger generations are starting to think about that more versus what some of the, I'd say the older Gen X or the early or the
Millennials.
younger baby boomers,
Oh,
so
yep.
that sort of era, a lot of them have not planned properly because they're coming up on retirement, and I've met with plenty of them that simply are just going to have to live off their Social Security and what little they have in their 401ks, and I weep for them on the inside because I was like, I don't want to be that way when I get to their age and 20, 30 more years, so
Yeah. And I mean, I think if you talk to all those older folks in the nursing home and you ask them, if you could change one thing in your past, what would it be? And I think a lot of them would probably say, how I treated money, or what I did with my money. There's always that rugged dude that's hanging out in the corner with the cigar saying, yeah, at least I lived every minute the way I wanted. Yeah, that's all great and everything, but what if you had responsibilities? What if you had a kid? What if you have a spouse that maybe, God forbid something happens? You want to be able to take care of the people around you. And again, we've talked about this during this episode, but we have to change our mindset a little bit on instead of buying things for that short-term satisfaction, right? Like you said, the Starbucks, the Target runs, all that. You have to kind of start thinking more long-term, because I've always had the mindset, one thing when I started this podcast and the fact that I opened up our business recently, I always had the mindset of like short-term sacrifice for long-term laziness. Whether that's investing money or whether that's, the job that you're doing right now or the little money that you do have, if you could just sacrifice short-term, 10 years, 20 years, that is not a long time if you're living to be 90, right? Like that is a very small portion of your life. But if you can invest those 15, 20 years into a portfolio, into money that you currently have, and just don't spend it, then you can live a longer, healthier life because you're going to have money on the back end. But a lot of people don't talk about that enough, right? Like there's more viral dances on social media, and there's more weird content on YouTube and fail videos. Like no one's really talking about this stuff, Justin. Right?
Yeah. And I think that I guess to close with, one of my biggest piece of advice, if somebody is getting into investing, is stay invested. Don't get out of it, because it all operates on cycles. If you look back, 30, 40 years ago, the stock market is way higher than it was, 30, 40 years ago, and even 10 years ago, even through the 08, 09 crash. If you would have stayed invested from like the 2003 crash or so, and stayed through the 08, 09, now you would have like 4 times the amount of money that you would have had if you didn't add anything else to it, if not more. One prime example is I've got a client that bought Home Depot at around 08, 09. I think they were about $26 a share. They got up to $420 a share, and now I think they're down to like 320 something. But regardless, he's like 1,200% increase just off Home Depot. And it's because he stayed invested. And yes, he's a lot older and he had plenty of other assets, but that just goes to show that, if you have something that you believe in, and because everybody's always going to, update or repair their homes, Home Depot is not going to go anywhere.
Right.
Look for those companies who maybe pays a really good dividend, like Procter and Gamble, or something. And you just want to have a little bit in each thing if you're doing it on your own.
Right.
So stay invested. Don't let 700 point dip in the Dow scare you, because it's going to come back 2 or 3 times within the next week or so. That's just how the market works. It's always going to be fluctuating, going up and down. But buy low, sell high. They always sell that, right? They always say that, right?
That's right.
And that's what it is. If the market goes down, it's on sale. Everybody better buy in.
Well, and I mean, you have to think to yourself that we've right now in 2022, there has never been a better time to be alive. And then, next year we're going to say the same thing. The year after that, we're going to say the same thing, because things are always getting better in the world. We're always innovating. We're always getting more and more things. We're always going to make more money. The day that the world stops making money and the stock market never comes back, because it always comes back. Always.
It always, yeah.
Always does. Every market comes back. You know, you look at, again, what happened in '08 with the housing market. Look at where it's at now. I mean, Jesus, it's been cranking nonstop, which is scary, but it's been cranking. And you know what? If we end up popping this bubble and ends up going down, and let's say we have another '08 again, in a year, 2 years, 3 years, it's going to get back up again. And we're all going to be fine. We're going to recover.
Yep.
The day it doesn't happen, you don't have to worry about paying a mortgage. You don't have to worry about paying bills, because everyone's going to be in that same situation, and then the world is going to have to adapt to this apocalyptic world.
Sure.
So the day that shit never bounces back, don't worry, you'll be fine, because you won't have to pay your rent or anything, because
Exactly.
you know, Penny Mac and everyone else is going to shut down. So you're fine. Just to stay invested and focus on those long-term goals. So
take the emotion out of it.
that's it, man. Yeah, I love it. Well, Justin, this was fun, man. It's
Definitely.
You know, it's not a lot of. I've talked a little bit about real estate and money and stuff on my podcast, but typically I say my show is about health, wellness, and social interaction, and I look at this as like a form of health, financial health.
Financial health. And that's what I use in all of my meetings, is that it's like going to the doctor, right? I can't, if you come to me from a financial perspective and say, oh, what can you do for me? Well, I don't know. I don't know any of your symptoms. So we got to take your vital signs, your financial vital signs first, because you're not going to go to the doctor and they're just going to prescribe you some random medication right away. No, they're going to narrow it down and try and figure out what's wrong with you before they even, prescribe you medicine. It's the same thing in the financial world. We're going to, find all of your financials, put it all on one nice balance sheet, and I'm going to expose where on your balance sheet has the most opportunity, and then I will build a plan based off that. So everything's tailored specifically to that person. But it's like you said, it's financial health. We always cheers to health, wealth, and happiness. Well, that's true. Like, take care of your health, take care of your wealth, and it'll just translate to being happier. I feel anyway.
That's right. Now you nailed it, man. Yeah, that's the one thing. I try to take care of 3 things in my life when it comes to health, and I always say, well, technically 4 things, but when I say my fitness and my overall health, I'm really talking about my heart, but that also includes like being compassionate, being empathetic, being loving, right? So take care of your heart, take care of your mind. So do the things you have to do, whether that's meditation, pray, whatever you're into, be positive, like your mind. And the other one's your pocket. And that's the third one. So your heart, your mind, and your pocket. If you could take care of those 3 things, that's good, man.
Exactly.
There's not a whole lot of things that can go on in your life if those 3 things are on point. But what's funny, right, is like if you don't if you don't take care of one of those things, it kind of falls.
The other things fall apart.
Yeah, which is interesting, because of course if you don't have a lot of money, then you become stressed out and your mind is going crazy, and then your health starts getting affected. Maybe you stopped eating right or stopped working out or whatever the case is. So, and I think financial health is probably the captain of that ship, right? Because they say money doesn't buy happiness, but that's kind of bullshit, because you might not, if you're a millionaire, you might not be happy as like me, who isn't a millionaire. But I don't think that's what they're talking about when they say that. How I look at that expression is, it's not like money cures everything, because that's inaccurate. But money does buy happiness, because whether that's $30,000 a year for you or $1 million a year for you, whatever that number is, that's going to make you happy. It doesn't mean that you need to be rich. It just means money is a currency, and to buy a home and car and food, you need it. So if, a dollar Big Mac is going to make you happy, if you don't have a dollar, you're fucked.
Exactly.
So it's kind of it's an interesting topic, man. I'm glad you kind of popped the cherry, so to speak, on this podcast regarding it, because I think there's a lot of good nuggets in here, and a lot of things people can learn from. So let me ask you this though, before I let you go. What is if someone can get a hold of you, maybe to reach out and ask for advice, or social media handles, website, like if you can shout that out to let people know. Yeah.
I'm currently in transition of opening my own firm. So I want to, I don't have a lot of information yet, but I definitely have an email address. I could
say,
yeah,
whatever you feel comfortable with. Great.
it's Justin Westerman, my first and last name, at mycoastalwealth.com. So I'm working on opening my own office here in town so that I can see people other than just Zoom, and get some more things rolling, because I've got a lot of stuff on the books cooking. But yeah, and the number one thing is that first initial meeting, it's just getting to know you from a values standpoint. We don't talk about money. We talk about what's important to you about money, but we don't bring in financial documents. I don't recommend any products, anything, because it's all about building a relationship first. And then once I find out where your values lie, then we'll build a plan off that. But I don't care what you have. I just want to get to know you first and see if we even are a match, a fit, and then we go from there. That's basically how I start all of my process. Basically, is values based planning. And there's a book about that, of course, too. So,
Sweet.
But
that's great, man. Congrats again on the new venture.
Thank you.
Take it from me, who's someone who's I've owned and sold companies before, and I just started up this other one as well. Shameless plug, Meet Cute Box. It's a date night subscription box. But there is nothing truly. There's a lot of positives to working for a corporate job. We've mentioned a lot of this stuff today: retirement plans, 401k, things like that. But man, there's nothing quite like working for yourself.
Sure.
It's pretty special. So congrats on the venture. It's scary, but I'm sure you're going to do fine, because it sounds like you know a lot about this industry and that you're an expert on it. So keep your head up, and I'm sure you'll do fine. And maybe I'll have you back on the show when you open up, and we could talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then we can maybe get a little bit more specific than just a general overview of retirement. Like if there's certain topics that your listeners have questions on, either reach out to me directly or and you can pass on my information, whatever the case may be. And we can, it's all about education.
That's right.
I'm not in it for, to chase the next paycheck, because that just comes with the territory. Yeah. But for me, it's really just trying to change mindsets and get to people think outside of their little bubble from time to time, and learn more about different strategies to build wealth, and not just, because wealth is subjective, right? We have different ideas of what we consider wealthy. And like you said, it could just be that our health is top notch, and that could be where we feel that we're the most wealthy. That's right. But it does take currency. It takes some sort of money to be able to do these things, to stay in shape or active or whatever. So but yeah, definitely, I would love to be back and maybe talk to some topics that are a little bit more specific, or for sure, or just wherever the wind takes us, basically, like it did today.
No, I dig it. I mean, we've already gone an hour, so this thing time flies here.
That's awesome.
It's like a time warp in here.
Yeah.
But congrats. Am I your first podcast, by the way?
Yeah.
Hey,
I've never been on a podcast before, so
wow, look at that.
I like the concept. Yep.
Let's give him a little applause, ladies and gentlemen. Great job. No, man, you did great. Yeah, thanks for coming on, and I'll leave your information in the description, episode notes, for people who are just listening, not watching on YouTube. So folks, if you're listening, reach out to Justin. But Justin, thanks for the lesson here, man. This was good. We'll do it again for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out, man. Appreciate you.
No problem. Yeah.
All right, buddy. See you.